All right, welcome to the PokerNews Podcast. I am joined by my guest, somebody I'm pretty excited to talk about, has been in the headlines. That's Robbi Jade Lew. Robbi, I know you've been super busy. It's the talk of the poker world, so I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me.
Yep, no problem.
Now, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? I think, like so many others, I wasn't too familiar with you before this Hustler Casino live stream happened. Uh, can you just give the listeners a little bit more about who you are and your background?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of rumors flying around because I've always been really private about where I've come from, but now this is in the public arena. I can't seem to do that anymore. So here it goes. I spent 15 years of my life in a very flourishing career in the biopharmaceutical industry, and it wasn't really until I went to WSOP 2021 is kind of a bucket list thing from a hobby that kind of grew a little bit more during the pandemic, just so that my family had something else to talk about other than the pandemic. That I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go for it. There's a lot of transitionary changes for people during the pandemic. And for me, I just wanted to go to WSOP 2021, see what it was like to go into the world of poker competitively. And I was working my full-time career at the time, so I wasn't able to obviously go to even barely any of the events, but the ones that I did go to, I did fairly well in. And here comes 2022, and we're at the end of March, I decided that I was gonna just take a sabbatical, or I guess some people like to call it retirement, which is crazy, from my career that I had been doing for 15 years, and just kind of delve into what has always been a hobby of mine, because I think I owed it to myself, and financially I was ready to kind of jump into that and give it the full attention that it deserves, especially coming so late in the game. And people don't know this, but you can't just jump into the world of poker and be good at it. And even I know that. And I knew that there was a lot of work that needed to be done and a lot of time that I needed to catch up on, a lot of catching up that needed to be done. And that's when I hired Faraz Jaka as a coach. I also hired Steve Blay from Advanced Poker Training, and just really took on the one-on-one training lessons, as well as got on several of the training sites and try to kind of speed up the training process, so to speak, but more so in the tournament world, because I wasn't familiar with the tournament space. The cash space I was already kind of doing, and unconventionally to begin with, but the tournament space really demands more attention, period. And in our than the world of cash.
So how does one go from playing tournaments? I know you played $300-400 time of tournaments to buying into a very high stakes cash game such as Hustler Casino Live.
Well, I was already playing like mid to high stakes to begin with in private games. And I think that's something that people maybe don't know about me. And so you have to understand that I already had a very lucrative career before this. And I think that might be where the confusion is, I've gotten everything from who's her sugar daddy, like, where's she getting this money? Oh, go cry to your real daddy, ask him to give you some money. And the fact of the matter is that I was like wearing more jewelry worth more than the cost of the $135,000 prize that I gave back. And it's only to say that I worked in a profession for 15 years and I grew from the beginning to the end. And that dedication to that profession allowed me the bankroll to kind of step into the mid to high stakes. And a lot of people will always say, I've gotten a lot of questions about, well, if that's the case, then why were you having somebody stake you? And you and I both know, Chad, that many of the poker pros out there are often staked. But even for those who aren't, it's a lot like the analogy that I have is that when you start your own company as an entrepreneur, you can put all your eggs in one basket and be the one that fully funds it yourself. But if an investor comes knocking on your door and they see the potential for them to also have a piece of the pie and have you help them grow it as an investment, why wouldn't you take an investment? And that's just similarly to what I was dealing with at that point. And for my staker at the time, every time he gave me money, I grew it for him. And that's why I was in super high stakes.
Now, is the person who was staking you the RIP that was also in the game?
Yes.
Okay. Now, before I get to that, because I do have some questions there, I'm curious to know how you came to play on the Hustler Casino Live in the first place. Was this something you sought out to play on? Did somebody recruit you? What's the story there?
Yeah, I was recruited by Aaron. I was also recommended through Schwan. And so there's, you know, it's a small community, as you know, the poker community. And I had been playing at the bike, never really at Hustler, but a lot of the players that were on the Hustler live stream saw me playing at the bike and they recommended and gave my name to Ryan in the process. Or I think actually DGAF. Uh, yeah.
Right. And with Rip, there's been some wild rumors after this, story broke. I'm sure that you've heard them. From you, what is the relationship there? How did he come to stake you? Have you known him for a while? What are the details there?
Well, so Rip and I were playing in the poker arena. We were in several private cash games and we kept running into each other, especially around like March, April. He's also in the biotech industry. He's a huge entrepreneur. So he's got his hands in lots of entrepreneurial pots. And one thing that we kind of sort of started discussing was my influence in that world. And so we kind of started working on this company together. But more so than that, we also had this common love for poker. And as many people know, he's very wealthy, and I am not the only person that he stakes or backs. He does back and stake other poker players as well. No need to name names whatsoever. So I wasn't the first one there, but he saw the success that I had in the cash world. And he actually asked if he could stake me in a couple of the tournaments. So he doesn't stake me in everything, but this one was a very high stakes tournament and he was willing to do it for this one. And it's something we had discussed before and prior. And so he, offered to stake and I obviously accepted it and we had that exchange. He actually wasn't supposed to be playing that day, but I think that where the speculation started to kind of arise was his response to me coming back into that room and gathering the chips and coming back out and then coming back in for the single 5,000 chip that was missing from the 135 that I had agreed to give to Garrett at the time. And he kind of lost it. And it's just an interesting response. And people were sort of speculating what was going on there. And I completely understand why people were questioning it. I think that's at the time when we had to kind of disclose that he obviously had a financial investment in what was happening. And in theory, he felt like I was giving away money that wasn't deserving, that Garrett wasn't deserving. So, I mean, and there's far more than just his egotistical response to the fact that like his money was being given away to another man at the table that should be man enough to accept that I won the hand. It was more so that he was like, how can this person be taken advantage of? He obviously was also upset with me. And you can see that he wears his heart on his sleeve for the rest of the entire night, where he's just kind of like just completely in a different zone and in complete shock, as I think many people are, as am I. But I was trying to move past it at that moment. And I think that's where the rumors kind of started coming to light because of that interesting emotional response that he had, which I would think would be now better understood given his financial investment in the whole case.
I do want to ask some more questions about that, but before I do, before you get into the game, this was a pretty tough lineup. You had Garrett there, you had Phil Ivey. Were you nervous about playing this? Was Rip comfortable putting you in a game with such a tough lineup, given that, you may have not played at such high stakes before?
So I think that one of the traits that makes me unique than others is that, and I hate to say this, I don't know how to say this without, is that for me, when I'm sitting at a table, I'm just playing the game. How much money is on the tables kind of unfazes me. And I saw this in a prior interview earlier today, and that is that I think that, there are a lot of people out there that can have the same level of bankroll, but if you put them on a table, there's half of them will be playing with scared money, maybe even more so. Regardless, a $268,000 hand may not even matter to them because the money doesn't matter. But for whatever reason, they just play differently, knowing that like in 5 minutes they can lose it all, right? But then there's a certain personality types in the super high stakes where they're just playing their game. So the money, I hate to say it, starts to feel like monopoly money, but if you start thinking about the value of the chips in front of you, the actual value, you forget to actually play the game. And so for me, it's just, how much money is on the table does not change the way that I play the game. So it doesn't matter if we're sitting at a 2-5 or we're sitting at a 200, 400. I'm just playing my game the way that I would always play it. I do not play scared money. And that's kind of the biggest bravery that I have, that I think that makes a lot of investors want to potentially invest in me. And like I said, Rip has never lost a dollar when he has invested in me in the past.
Prior to the game in question, did you have any experience with Garrett? What was that relationship like there between the two of you?
Yeah, so we were already in two previous live streams, and I know that Joey Ingram just kind of released a prior hand, and they're like, "So is this what she means when she said you keep letting me do this to you?" And it is a little bit. If you look at my private previous hands with him, we're kind of just always going back and forth. Had he not bluffed me before, once or twice, or maybe a few times, I would have never called him. And I've even actually said this before. If he was anybody else, I wouldn't have called him. And it's nothing against Garrett. It's just against the way that he's played towards me and the way I've actually seen him play towards others. I mean, as you know, the live stream is open to everybody. So if you ever look back at any of the episodes, we see the hands that he was in where he bluffed people out of pots. Like there was one hand with Andy, and I don't want to butcher the hand, where I could not even believe that Andy folded. And what a Garrett move to bluff him out of practically the nuts. And so knowing that about his gameplay, I wouldn't call it like the table bully, but it has often been referred to as that. It was an intuitive move. And I thought to myself, like, I just knew he was bluffing me. And you'll notice that I almost called a hand prior where he actually had the stone cold nuts. And I almost did it because I'm like, I think he's on a draw. So I'm not sure. I was very inaccurate about that hand, but very accurate about this one, so to speak. I mean, he was obviously on a much better draw than I was, but regardless, I just had a feeling he was bluffing me, and it was intuition.
Let's talk about the hand here real quick, kind of step by step. It's a 100, 200, 400 game, and you put on the straddle. It folds around to Garrett, who was that third blind. So he's in for 400, and he raises to 3,000 with the 8-7 of clubs. You look down at the jack of clubs, 4 of hearts. Now, that's not a very premium hand. What led to you deciding to put in the additional 2,200 to defend?
Because we were heads up, and that was the absolute only reason. So it's almost like protecting your blind or protecting the straddle type of thing. I thought, let me see the flop. And really, I should have folded it right there. That was an automatic fold. Normally I would, and I just decided for whatever reason, and I do this oftentimes, not every hand is a hand that I play properly. There's often times where I'm like, oh my God, Frost is going to be so mad that I'm calling right now. Yeah, I call. You know what I mean? Like I surprise myself at times. I literally just feel it. And in that very moment, I was like, yeah, I'm going to call and see what the flop is.
Now you see the flop, it's 10, 10, 9 with 2 clubs. So he flops the open-ended straight flush draw. You of course have the jack of clubs. He bets 2,500 and you call with just jack high right now. What was going through your head there?
I'm looking at a backdoor flush draw and a backdoor straight draw.
That seems pretty standard up to that point, and I think, I think so, and Negreanu has said so as well, but gets funky on the turn when the 3 of hearts hits. This is when Garrett bets 10,000, and then you just min click it back to 20,000. What's going through your head there with the raise and then just making it a minimum raise?
It's because I thought I was sitting with a 3, and I know that's really difficult for people to understand, and we can get through why the story did change a little bit afterwards for very sound reasons, if I can better explain it. But for me, the jack 3 was what I thought I was holding. I didn't know at the time that jack 3 was a hand that I was holding prior to this hand. So because it kind of confused me why in my brain I thought I was holding jack 3. And when you see me look down at my hand, I mean, whenever I do look down at my hand, and I'm not actually registering what the hand is, and you'll see me do this in a prior hand with Phil Ivey, where I do look down at pocket aces. I know I'm holding pocket aces. Like nobody ever looks at pocket aces, but I'm doing it as just a movement that becomes natural to always having to look down at your hand, so it doesn't look like you have a very strong hand like that. And I just looked down at my hand. I also did want to take a quick glance at my jack and see if that was a club or a spade. But in my mind, I was like, I have a bluff catcher. I've got a 3 sitting behind the jack, and I'm good. And I thought that was a viable minimum raise for a 3 that hit the board on the turn.
But then he jams on you for 109,000, which is your entire stack, and you pause for a little bit and then end up calling off. What led you to decide to call off there?
Multiple things were happening in my brain right then. One, I was like, he absolutely doesn't have it. He wouldn't be jamming. If he's sitting with, a 10 and a trip 10s, or if he's sitting with whatever, a set, if he's even sitting with top pair, I didn't see him jamming on me there. I saw him jamming with either ace high, which I was thinking because I thought I was holding a 3, or that was a very upper, like that was the best thing I was giving him right then, or a draw that was missed right after the flop. The other reason I also was like thinking, like, one, he's done this to me before with like middle to low pair. And secondary to that as well was that, I was already $38,000 in. As you'll notice, I showed up to the table with $240,000 roughly. I put 140 to the side and 100 on the table. The reason that I did that, and I didn't play with my full stack at the table, is for incidences like this. If I came across an all-in situation, I'm in for 30 something $1,000 as it is. How much am I going to lose? I can make this go the whole way and hope for the very best. I still have 140 sitting next to me, and that's the reason I divided it. Or I can just give up what's already in the pot right now. And I thought about it. I'm like, I just wasn't ready to give it up for this particular hand against him. So there was multiple things happening here. I was playing the man because I just knew in my heart that he did not have it. I just freaking knew it. I just knew it. And that was number one. Number two is I'm thinking, even if he does have it, I'm going to run it twice, see what happens. And I mean, how much, and I hate to say it, I know the value of $1, but I was willing to take the risk with running it twice and seeing what happened ultimately at the end. And just risking the rest of my money because I had that second stack sitting next to me. And let me see, I think those are the things that I was ultimately thinking. I was already popped in my brain. And I had a bluff catcher, and I did not think he had it.
And so at that point, you have a bluff catcher, but in your mind, are you saying that you thought you had that pair of threes as the bluff catcher?
Yes, I thought I had Jack 3. And it wasn't until actually after the fact that I was told that Jack 3 was in my hand prior. Because I have to be honest with you, when I flipped those cards over, I mean, you could see the shock in my face. I'm just like, I couldn't believe it. I start flustering and confusing myself and trying to come up with reasons for why I would ever make a freaking call that terrible with Jack 4 off. I could not even believe it. And then to be honest, when I look over it, I'm like, why am I getting defensive about it? And it was because he was glaring at me. And then I just got mad. I'm like, the fact that you can't take it as a man right now is so irritating that I just start getting defensive. Well, you keep letting me do this to you. You look like you want to murder me, which was absolutely true. I mean, if you look at the glare that he was giving me, you look like you wanted to murder me. I'm flustering. I don't know why he's asking me about the hand. Even Ivy pulled me to the side afterwards, and he's like, you never, ever, ever have to explain to anybody why you played your hand the way you did. Don't ever feel like you ever have to explain that. It doesn't matter. Nobody ever asks anybody else how you played the hand the way you did. Why didn't I just ultimately right then and there say, I thought I was holding Jack 3. First of all, complete embarrassment. And I was actually shocked. I don't think it had even registered with me that I just flipped over Jack 4, but it had registered with me. If you actually look at it, let me take that back, because I did flip over Jack 4, and it was absolutely ridiculous to me in my mind that I am now confused with myself. Somebody's asking me why I played the hand that I did and the way that I did. And I could not for the life of me believe that in 2 runouts, I won with a hand that trashy. And I ultimately felt bad about it. I was sick to my stomach that I won Jack 4 off with 2 runouts. It was like the storm that just exploded right then and there. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't surprised with his reaction when I flipped over the Jack 4. I mean, ultimately, I can see now why that would be beyond shocking to him.
Right. I know some people said, you said that you were shocked when you turned over the Jack 4. There have been others out there who have said it was your lack of being shocked that leads them to be skeptical, that if you really thought you had a Jack 3 and then you tabled the Jack 4, that you would have some sort of oh my God, outburst or reaction, where you were much more internal about it.
I'm very good at internally keeping a level of shock to myself, especially if I was shocked to see it, as the level of shock I guess the world needs to see. I guess ultimately I would have said it, but I was very composed in the process because I was internalizing what had just occurred. And I was aware that my response would indicate that I made a mistake, and I wasn't prepared to show the whole world that I made a mistake. I mean, ultimately I'm sitting at a table. This is a really, really big hand. And I wasn't, for me, I was thinking internally, what the hell just happened? And people respond to different stimuli different ways. And for me, I couldn't believe what happened. I wasn't prepared to share exactly how I felt about what incident had just occurred. I will say that once we went outside with Garrett and he, so to speak, we were in the hallway, and we can discuss that in detail a little bit more. I did walk up to him after I gave him the first batch of the chips and say, hey, I just felt like I needed to tell him. I was like, just, would it make you feel better if I told you that I thought I was holding Jack 3? And I felt at that very moment, like, just to kind of calm his nerves and I don't know. There's a part of me that had a little heart. I'm like, I need to like just come, like, I just need to state. I know I'm embarrassed, but if it's going to make him kind of understand that hand a little bit better. And he looked at me, he's like, yeah, that might actually make me feel better. So I did tell him that. And when I told him that, I was like, great, I'm going to go on camera now and I'm going to tell the same thing because that's actually the truth. And I didn't do it at the table. I don't know why it's difficult to understand that I didn't do it at the table. That was a immediate response. I'm in a high pressure situation. I'm shocked myself. You have to understand, this isn't something I was preparing to respond to. And it was just, the whole thing was super awkward. And more than anything, I can't believe I won a hand that shitty on 2 runouts. I mean, I was like, if anything, give him 50% of it. I mean,
so to clarify and be clear, did you offer to give the money back, or did he ask first for it to be returned?
I went to him after there was a little bit of a scuffle back there, and he's kind of pacing and fuming, and I've got Ryan Feldman on the side stressing out about not knowing what to do. I was led into a weird little hallway space to the left of the cashier. I think somebody has a photo out there about what exactly that environment looked like. And I got tapped on the shoulder by Luis, he said, Garrett wants to speak to you. I'm like, okay. And I got up, I walked out, walked through the first poker room, walked through the second poker room, turned immediately left side of the cashier, and they were standing there. We talked a little bit. I'm like, what's going on? And Ryan Feldman's like, he just wants to understand why the hand happened. I was like, what can I do to make this better? How can I make this better for you? What do you need me to do? And he looked straight in my eye with his little backpack on. He's like, you can start by giving me my money back. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Is that really what this is all about? Ryan's like, I don't know what, I have nothing to do with this. I'm like, Garrett, so what are you saying? Like, you're not going to go back in there and play? He's like, I was like, will you go back in there and play if I give you your money back, or I give you your part of the money back? He's like, yeah, I'll go back in there and play if you give me my money back. And I'm like, so I was like, is this really happening right now? And Ryan's like, I can't have any part to do. I can't have any part to do with this transaction, which I completely understand. I mean, I was in shock, and I just remember being like, wow, like and I'm thinking, this is the star of the show. Like, this is like their guy. Like, I'm not going to be the sole over 130. I know people are like, it's $135,000 and you won the hand, but I won a hand that I shouldn't have won. So like, understanding that I won a hand that I shouldn't have won, and a part of me kind of hoping that maybe I just wish almost that he won half of it. And that's what it kind of felt like. It would be like winning half the hand if I gave him his part of the money back. So I'm like, fine, but you better go in there and play then, and don't cause any like havoc for production. My heart was for production. I looked at Ryan's face. He was super stressed out. And I just thought to myself, I can't be the reason that there's this scuffle in the middle of this, like, major live stream that already looks awkward and weird, that there's 2 people missing at the table. And I'm like, I'll give you your money back. Let's just go back. Can we just go back? Like, I mean, I did not think at that moment in the slightest bit that anybody would ever deduce that being as an admission of guilt. I didn't think I was being accused of cheating. I'm like, I'm not like, I could not believe and fathom that what could potentially have been the outcome of that were people accusing me that was an admission of guilt. Because for me, that was me alleviating a highly stressful situation and providing some kind of like solitude for a very stressful looking producer that has never experienced this. For all of us, this is a very unfamiliar space. And whatever our reactions were unfamiliar reactions in a space that we have never ever experienced before. And that was my immediate response, was just to alleviate the problem as quickly as possible. And my pompous brain thought to myself, it's $135,000. If I think I'm really as good as I think I am and I can bluff people out of pots, I'll get it back. And if I get it back from him, I'll get it back from him in this stream or the next. And I was playing the very next day. And I thought to myself, I'll get it back.
Knowing everything that you do now, do you regret it? Do you regret giving him that money then?
As of the level of admission that some people think that it insinuated. Right. And also because ultimately I won that hand. So I feel like a little bit of a bitch. I do. And it's unlike me. I got a lot of friends from across the world, a lot of poker pro friends. And they're like, the one thing I know about you, Robbi, is that you never stand down to a man. How did this guy overpower you in this particular situation? And like I said, it was a perfect storm. It was a hand I didn't think I was deserving of winning. It was a high stress situation for a production crew that I expect, that I did not want to be any more burdened about what was happening. It was the fact that we're on live stream and there's people missing at the table. I just felt like I was the source of calming the problem down, despite whether it was the right way to respond to it.
We talked about Rip earlier in the game and how he was staking you. What was his reaction when he learned that you gave Garrett the money back? And then also, what's that relationship like right now with Rip?
Well, I had to actually, I avoided watching the stream back because it felt like PTSD if I watched it back. And I did end up watching it like a day and a half ago. And I couldn't believe that you could actually hear his conversation outside when he's like, you fucking whatever. And I'm like that. He was extremely angry, and he was very angry at Garrett. And that is the reason Garrett didn't come back in. You can imagine Garrett's not going to come back into the room that way. When somebody is literally going off on him outside, and he looked at me and he was like, I'm not coming back in. And I understood why he wasn't going to come back in. He took his chips and he bailed. And I completely understand Rip's response to that. In his mind, I took his money away and gave it to a man who didn't win the hand.
And what is the status now with you and Rip? Is he still angry, or have you guys talked it through?
Continue to stake me and the other people that he stakes in the world of poker. He's calmed down, and that 135 I owed him. Fairly so. And if ever I get it back, and if Garrett ever does the right thing once the investigation is complete, then I guess I get my 135 back.
I want to just ask bluntly, if you will, because I know a lot of people are out there thinking that you did. Did you cheat? Did you do anything wrong? Any malicious intent in that game?
No, I absolutely unequivocally did not cheat. And the one thing, and I've said this before, the one thing I regret is I wish at that very moment, and I understand why not, but I did say to Nick, and I said, can you guys just go in there and get my bag and get everything and just go through everything? I wish you could have all just stripped down naked, given all of our shit, including my jewelry. I'm wearing the ring that was in question, and just had them stripped right then and there with everything that we had, because I think that would have really solved a lot of problems. But of course, that would have been a very accusatory request, and I think none of us thought that it would reach to the depths that it's reached right now.
I do want to ask about some of the lingering questions that those who may think you cheated are asking. One of them is involving a clip that's kind of been surfacing out there of a vibrating chair or your vibrating midsection in some hands prior to the one in question. Do you have an explanation for that? Do you know what was going on? What happened?
So I was shaking my foot, and I've said this before, it's so crazy that I have to bring my medical history into question. I have ADHD. I normally take Vyvanse for it, and I didn't fill my prescription. I still haven't. I still have to go back and fill my prescription. I didn't take it that day. The reason I'm wearing sunglasses is I had a lot of wine with my identical twin sister the night before, because she was gone to Palm Springs for 3 weeks. I was a little hungover that day, put on some sunglasses, didn't want to take any medication as well, and didn't really have it, didn't have time to go home and get it. And so when I don't take that, I'm a little hungover, I'm going to be shaking my foot, fidgeting a lot. It's just my automatic response. Everybody that knows me really well knows that that's who I am. I'm constantly like that. There's no external stimuli there, and people don't realize when you're in a live stream, we don't have our phones, we have no electronic devices on us, we don't have any external stimuli that can kind of provide us some sort of something to do while you're not in a hand. There's really no TV that you could be watching, no games you can be playing, and even the conversations you're having with the people to your right and left is going to be on TV. So you're kind of thinking I have to be very careful, and you're just kind of in this meditative state of mind. And for me, that was a very uncomfortable situation to be in. When I'm in a hand and I'm thinking, and I'm a little stressed out about the hand that I'm in, I'm shaking. I was twisting my ring, as I always do. I'm shaking my foot, which is my foot. And I wish there was cameras underneath that table so you could see that that's what's happening. The vibrating chair that's in question is sitting there tonight at max pain Monday. So if that was something that was a security breach, I don't know why they're sitting at the same table with the same chairs. So somebody's getting really lucky because they get the infamous cheating vibrating chair and they're sitting in it tonight.
Now, when it comes to the seats and the chairs, was it something you chose or was it a random draw in that game?
It's a random draw, as it is every time. Whoever comes first, it was Luis at the time. He shuffled it up. He's like, okay, Robbi, pick it. And I'm like, shuffle it again, pick it. And you just grab it and you get it. And I was like, yes, C2 again. I don't know why I liked C2. I had like a plus $100,000 night in C2 on Friday. And I was like, this is my lucky seat too. So I got seat 2 again, and nobody sits on seat 1.
Now, you mentioned that no cell phones are allowed, but there is a screen grab that shows something in your right pocket and it does look a lot like the size of a cell phone to me. What was that?
I was wearing the absolute tightest pants in the absolute smallest size. They were Versace pants or tights, I guess, or leggings. When I stood up, which I often did, I was standing up, I was walking around. There is absolutely no way to hide a cell phone in those tights. There are, I don't know, I want to say like almost 8 cameras that are hidden. You can see them all around that entire room, and they're on all at the same time. I am 100% confident that the investigation, once it's fully complete, will have me from every single angle, sitting on a 360-degree view of me, standing when I'm standing, and that every issue regarding whether there's an actual device in my pants that have no pockets. There are no pockets in those, which is why my mic pack was actually stuffed into my pants, like with nothing to really hold on to. I just had them stuffed in because that's how tight my pants are. If I stand up, you can't hide even a friggin' credit card in there. So the evidence will show that. And that's why I'm not even bothering about even addressing that, whether that was like a shadow, there's seams in those pants. It is what it is. That was a really blurry photo, but I'm sure that Hustler Casino has a very, very clear, not pixelated version of that photo. And then we can decide then if I really had a secondary device in my pants.
Now, this whole incident has taken on a life of itself. I just seen a clip of you, an interview with you on Inside Edition. That's very mainstream.
Yeah.
What has it been like for you with this whole incident, going from what we've discussed to all of a sudden national media is reaching out to you?
You know, it's so interesting, Chad. You go through phases every single day. Like the first day I cried, the second day it's like people were comforting me. Like the third day you're like, okay, I'm gonna be above this. And I woke up today and I'm like, you just start to get numb to the whole thing and the repetition of the stories, and it just starts becoming something that's a part of you. And it's so unfortunate, but I even said this in an interview earlier, which is that I didn't ask for this. I did not ask for this. As much as people were like, oh, she probably wanted it. Nobody would ever ask for something this ridiculous. Nobody could ever imagine that something that they absolutely did not do was now going to be heavily scrutinized, hand for hand, gesture by gesture, by the entire world. 99.999% of whom you've never met or you've never known. And it's a really, really difficult thing to swallow. It's been emotionally traumatizing. It's been very taxing on my husband because of the rumors and other people involved in the whole case. It's nothing that I ever asked for. So I'm dealing with a really difficult situation back at home. I'm dealing with my own internal processes of how to deal with this moving forward. You start to realize, like, I've never thought that I'd ever need a publicist. Crazy things start happening in a very smart amount of time to keep your sanity. And it's like 1 second I'm brave and another second I'm sad and the third second I'm mad. And it's just emotions that I never thought that I had to experience all at once that are just kind of, again, perfectly storming up a friggin' tornado within me where I'm just like, I didn't friggin' ask for this. So what can I do? What can I do now that I have to live with it? And it's just a matter of freaking out and putting all the pieces together and building yourself back up and moving forward in a direction that's going to be very different than the time before this incident. It's not what I asked for. I never thought it could get here, but I will say that the outpouring of love and support from across the world, from people that I don't know at all, has been one of the most comforting, one of the most surprising things that I could possibly imagine, from several pros in the world of poker, several of whom I had become friends with, and even in this last year and slightly before. And that's what keeps me going and keeps me alive. But once again, this is not something I asked for. And I've had several mental breakdowns and conversations with people that have helped me get through it. And here I am, a little bit numb, a little more confident about the future because I have no choice. And I am a resilient, strong woman. I always have been. My parents have raised me to be more courageous and brave than, I think even as a little girl, I should have been because of my past and my upbringing. And I've always overcome situations like this, but this is a situation I know that I don't think anybody will ever, most people won't ever go through in their lives. So it's just a matter of how I deal with it moving forward. And I'm just trying to keep a brave face forward and talk to you guys and get my story out there and try to be as transparent as possible just to get through it, above it, and beyond.
Since the incident, we really haven't heard too much from Garrett. He did, of course, release his version and his thoughts on social media, where he was not shy about calling you a cheat and that he felt cheated in this incident. Have you had any contact with Garrett since then?
I've had third-party contact with him, and the contact is such that he has agreed to do the heads-up challenge that I challenged him to on Twitter.
Do you think that is going to happen? And if so, when it might?
I do think it's going to happen, and that is currently in the works. So be on the lookout for it.
And what about Hustler Casino Live? Have you been in contact with them? I know they have said that they are going to launch an investigation.
I trust that they're going to do everything in their power to have the most thorough, fair investigation. And I am just waiting for the outcome of that. As you know, Garrett and I are both not permitted to play at Hustler Casino Live for sound reason. I was actually scheduled to play the very next day. I can completely understand why we wouldn't be permitted to play until this investigation is complete. But I have full faith that the investigation will be complete to its entirety and that the truth will come out, which is that I am 100% innocent. At which point I think that Garrett will do the right thing. But regardless, the heads up match will continue as planned.
The Hustler Casino investigation, they alluded to possible polygraph tests for those involved. Have you taken a polygraph in this instance? And if not, is it something that you would be willing to do?
I would 100% do a polygraph test. I would do one right now if anybody asked me to.
And do you think, and it may be too early to tell too, depending on how things progress, but do you envision any possible legal action against Garrett if you are indeed innocent of what he's saying? And given the things that he said, one could make a case for, defamation.
I am not the type that would ever want to do that. I just hope he does the right thing if it is deemed that I am innocent, which I am. And that's why I'm just saying I see the good in people. I was compassionate that night when I gave my money back. And so obviously there's a very soft side of me that might be a little too soft. I don't want any legal action. I never do. And I think there's rumors going out there that my husband's which is one of the worst posts ever. And I'm like, that is so insane. We've never threatened legal action. I think he gets a little defensive at times for what's going on and what's being said. But as of right now, there's absolutely no intention to have any legal action against anyone. We're waiting for the investigation to be complete. And we hope that it's thorough, which I have full faith that it will be, and that the truth will come out. And when the truth comes out, I do have faith that Garrett will do the right thing and that we won't have to move forward in any legal way whatsoever.
In your mind, what is the right thing that Garrett could do if the investigation comes back in your favor?
I would think that he should. To be honest, I think we should just divide the money and give it to charity.
Fair.
I think that would be the charity of my choice, which I would go with Adopt Together, and a charity of his choice.
Fair enough. I think it's hard to argue against that. Now, is there anything before I let you go that you want the poker world to know that we might not have talked about or they've already heard?
I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse over the fact that I'm innocent. I can't believe that I've had to be up against having to prove, be guilty until I have to prove my innocence. I think that does a really big disservice to those that have ever been interested in playing poker from an amateur standpoint into the world of pros. So I think that we can really learn from this and take a different stance on this and really be fair to those that want to come into this world. I mean, once it comes out that I am innocent, it's going to be really unfortunate that I was deemed to be guilty this entire time until my innocence is proven. And I think that's the unfortunate message here, that I think every single person that is out there blasting me, harassing me can really learn from.
I gotta ask, this whole experience, has it turned you off from poker at all, or do you still love the game?
My ultimate love, and you will only see more of me because of it.
Perfect. Well, Robbi Jade Lew, I appreciate you taking the time to chat with us here at Poker News. And like so many others, like yourself, like Garrett, I'm sure, I'm looking forward to the Hustler Casino Live investigation and what comes of it.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Chad.